how much that matters to the job. And I mean, I think Vrabel would be the guy that brings the best staff because he's Mike Vrabel. Like he's going to have some clout with him. When people list off these coordinators, I mean, who the hell is Drew Petzing bringing with him? Who the hell is Bobby Slowick bringing with him? Like Saleh, to be fair to Saleh, he had the right idea with LaFleur. It just, and Ulbrich, I mean, he had the right idea. That it just didn't work. It was the right idea. It didn't work.
Yeah. Right process, wrong people. It's hard.
LaFleur's the best offensive coordinator they've had out of the last three.
I know. They're like best. Their best offensive coordinators in the past decade are like him and John Morton.
The John Morton,
the zombie Chan Gailey year too. Yeah, I mean, look, if they get past Vrabel and they can't, and they can't like figure out something with Carroll where they say, look, like you come in for a year or two, you help us like do some hiring and do some infrastructure. It's the coordinator roulette. And we got a long, thoughtful question that we'll close with from A-Rod, which is effectively like, all things being equal, picking an offensive coordinator versus defensive coordinator, because we've got a lot of questions about Glenn lately. And he's just like an example. Like and I used Ben Johnson as an example next to him, because the point is that I get all the excitement about Ben Johnson. He's going to get a ridiculous contract. We have no idea which of those two guys is going to be a better head coach. We truly don't. Like Johnson could be awesome. He could be the next Adam Gase. Aaron Glenn could be the next D'Amico Ryans, or he could be the next Robert Saleh. We really don't know because it's two completely different jobs. It's like taking your chef and making him a waiter, or like making him in charge of the whole restaurant. Like it's completely, whatever analogy you want to use, they're two different jobs. So you're kind of rolling the dice. And I'm just saying, like, don't assume Glenn is a worse hire than Cliff Kingsbury because Glenn comes from the defensive side of the ball.
Yeah, that's not fair.
Yeah, we really don't know. Now, yes, you could say if all things being equal with where the league is right now and where the Jets have just needed help, do you skew towards the offensive side if it's a tie? Sure. Just don't pick a worse random candidate just because they happen to be an offensive mind. That's kind of how they ended up with Gase in many ways, beyond the Peyton Manning factor. So there's not a perfect answer. I think like many Jet fans, why we gravitate towards like a Vrabel is in this situation, in this market, coming out of this situation, having someone who has made the playoffs multiple times, who has been a head coach, who has effectively been the most powerful person in an organization before. Vrabel has done that. Carroll has done that. That feels less risky than, hey, the coordinator from the Bucs had 10 good games. The Bucs are 4-6, by the way. So like, I know Baker's playing well, but it's like, they're probably going to go 7-10 this year. So the Jets hired an offensive coordinator from a 7-10 team, like, and maybe it works. Maybe he's actually the guy who's the next Sean McVay. I don't know. It's like you're throwing a dart, but maybe just close with some thoughts on the Jets don't get Vrabel. Glenn is considered the front runner, and Jet fans are freaking out because he's a defensive coordinator.
Yeah, and I think that's unfair to Glenn. I think I'd go back to the point of, I think Aaron Glenn's a good football coach. I think he's been around the NFL long enough now. Mind you, this is a guy in his 50s that he'll get some coaches to come with him. It's so hard to comment on the hire, just having no idea what offensive coordinator he'd be able to bring with him. Is there an innovative guy with the Lions staff that I'm big into blueprints and identities. And I think the selling point when the Jets hired Joe Douglas was that he was going to kind of build this hybrid of Philadelphia and Baltimore. And
yeah, I remember those days.
Yeah. In theory, it sounded great. I don't know if you can repeat Baltimore. I think that's pretty hard to do, although he was there for a long time. So I get why that was the PR thing attached to him. But I think it's different when you're a coach, right? Because when you're a GM, there's going to be things out of your control of why you can't replicate those organizations. A lot of it is, the owner and the resources you have or don't have because of that owner, and people in the building that handle certain responsibilities that maybe you took for granted and now you don't have those people in your new building. Like the Jets are not probably on the same level analytically as the Eagles. The Jets, from a pure boots on the ground perspective and depth scouting, are not on the same ground as Baltimore, right? Like they're just not. So and the culture and understanding of winning, and it always being about football. Always being about football, because it's not for the Jets always about football. But a coach, I think as a coach, you can come in and play the way you want to play. And that's up to you. To be fair to Saleh, honestly, to be fair to Saleh came in, and what were the things we were excited about? That Saleh knew how to build a front four that can get after the quarterback. All we did for years was talk about freaking John Abraham all the time. We're like, this team can never rush the passer without blitzing. And Saleh built a front that he didn't draft Quinnen Williams, but he got the best out of Quinnen Williams. And they developed an undrafted free agent in Bryce Huff, and they drafted Jermaine Johnson, and they drafted Will McDonald, and they had all these different defensive tackles rotating and causing havoc. And the Jets built a great pass rush under Robert Saleh. If Aaron Glenn came here and brought somebody from the Lions offensive staff and they said, we want to play like the Lions of the AFC, it doesn't mean that we're going to be able to draft as well as the Lions have, or we're going to be, running the same way the Lions have, a top-class organization right now. But are we going to have two running backs where we run the hell out of the football, and we're going to allocate a ton of assets into the offensive line, and we want our quarterback to not drop back more than 25 to 30 times a game, and we're going to be really clean on special teams, and we're going to take away the football, and after every game, the coach is going to be in the locker room and say, what did our defense do against the run, and what did our offense do to run the football? Because that's what Dan Campbell does every time he gets in the locker room. And oftentimes he's sitting there and going, we ran for 140 yards today. We held them to 60 rushing yards today. Like, hell yeah. It's the first thing he says to them. So that's something you could replicate. So that would be my glass half full for Aaron Glenn, is that he knows what it takes to win in this era of football when you don't have Patrick Mahomes, you don't have Lamar Jackson, you don't have Josh Allen, you don't have Joe Burrow. You see the Steelers kind of play that way right now, and I think that's what he would bring with him. And I'm not going to sit here and tell you it's all going to be perfect and it's going to work out and everything's going to be exciting, but at least it's an identity of football that you can get behind, right?
Yeah.
Like that's the key to me, is I want guys that I can get behind the identity of the way they coach and they want their team to be. That's Vrabel, that's Aaron Glenn, that's Ben Monken. But like, just because Liam Cohen has Baker Mayfield dropping back 57 times a game, it doesn't mean that he's going to be a good head coach.
I know. It's really a dart throw. And look, we're going to have a lot of time to look at a lot of these different candidates and to talk about how the Jets even go about evaluating this. But we'll see. Here we are again, throwing around these names.
It's unbelievable.
And trying to find the right one. It's not even – it's like November 15th. And like they're only played 10 games. It's actually crazy. Jets Colts. We'll be back. Flight plan Thursday. Punt to Trend Friday. TOJ Talk Saturday. 12 Pack Sunday. CR and I post game. After, now we're back to 1 o'clock games, so we can do our usual post game. No more 4 o'clocks. No more 8 o'clocks. Just 1 o'clock games. Thank God. Long overdue. Thank you, everyone, for listening. Thank you, War Room. Thank you for the Discord questions. We'll talk to you soon.